Yeah. Got it.
Okay, so yesterday I just shared the briefs. So I think the students may already be aware that there are three modules. One is the first module has four faculty, that is Sonal, George, Shirish, and Samarth. The second module is Kalpit Mayuri, and the third module is Shantanu and Manisha. So I think one by one, each of the sets of faculty will introduce their modules. After which you all would already have read the studio briefs that I shared yesterday. So if you all have any questions, you all can ask questions to the faculty related to the modules. After which you all will be sharing, giving your preferences to me and Vikram on via email. Okay, so that is after this whole session. So this session is just for introduction and any clarification regarding studio are introduced today. All right, so I think, should we start? Who's going first?
Anyone.
Whoever, I mean, Shantanu, want to go first? Kalpit?
Yeah, y'all can go first. We'll go second, anything.
Okay, do you all have presentations to share or?
Yeah, we have the presentation.
Yeah, we have the presentations. Yeah.
I think, yeah, so I guess anybody could start.
Are you guys able to see us?
No.
No.
Any
idea what can we do? Because
your video on, Kalpit?
yes, that the video
on.
symbol is on. We switched it off, on, did it twice.
But Kalpit, are you able to see yourself?
No, we can't see ourselves.
No.
So there is a problem in
all six of you.
camera.
Connection. Yeah, camera connection to the
Camera connection.
Otherwise, Kalpit, just try sharing your screen, and while in the meantime, maybe Mayuri, you can join it from the phone and use the video from the phone.
But
Okay.
go in another room. Go to another room. That's all.
Okay.
So I think in the meantime, someone else can start, na? Either Shantanu or Samarth or.
Yeah.
Okay, chalo Manisha, let's start then.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen. This is the
Yeah.
first time I've done.
Share screen.
Can you all see anything?
It'll come. It takes a lag, but it comes.
Lag.
Yeah, come now, Manisha.
Yeah, it's come on. Okay, great.
Yeah, see the presentation.
This is the size, right? It can't grow bigger than this, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so I just one of the reasons we are picking this particular program and site is we are hello to all the students first. And one of the reasons we're picking up this particular program and site is because we know we are in a lockdown semester. May not have the opportunities to research.
Actually, some disturbance.
Except put themselves on mute.
I think we'll all go on mute.
Yeah, everyone mute their mics.
Yeah, that will be good. So there's less echo and yeah. Okay. So again, welcome back to everybody. Hello to everybody. Good afternoon. And and one of the reasons we as a unit are picking up this site and program is because we are familiar with this site. And given that we are in a lockdown semester, you may not have access to researching with the site and the program and the stakeholders. We thought that since we have information, we are working on the site and we are building something here, we could share that with you and that you will be able to access most of this virtually. If you get an opportunity, you can visit the site. So that's one of the reasons we are picking up the site and we are quite familiar with it. So it's about an educational campus that we are proposing to work on. It's the VJTI campus. What educational campus design is all about is this semester. We want to discuss aspects of that campus design itself. How do we focus on stimulating and nurturing the potential of students on a campus through design? I think this is a very important aspect. How do you encourage students, bring the best out of them through design? We know how we do it as teachers, but how do we do it through design and spaces and architecture, programming, etc.? How do campuses resonate the contemporary learning environment that is able to manifest the ethos and vision created by its founding members? Now, this is another aspect that is very important because there was a vision and ethos that campuses were built with the vision to achieve something. Vision, mission statements that people make. This is made like 125 years ago for this campus, and how do we still ensure that that is in place? Given that campus communities are constantly evolving, what are the strategies that we could develop to address this aspect of change? We know that based on the ever-changing, evolving, transforming academic requirements, departments changes, new courses are added to the curriculum, new streams of thinking and direction are coming in, and hence the courses change, they grow. And how do sort of campus communities evolve, and how do we address that change? So that is another aspect that we would be dealing with. So then what's the kind of process that we want to engage with? It would be inclusive. That means with the stakeholders, informed with case studies and studies of projects that are there on the campus already. Interactive, that means we'll be engaged with the campus community, virtually of course, and integrated, bring together all aspects and complexities that make this design possible. So the idea is to bring in the voices and views of stakeholders. That would be very important. And finally, our educational campuses have gradually stopped catering to the growing needs of housing for students, faculty, and staff. This is a big issue that all campuses are facing, that they don't provide housing for the students, faculty, and staff. And hence this idea of campus culture has gotten to be lost. Various campuses, are proud of their campus culture, and we know many such campuses, but suddenly we see that students have had to live outside, faculty have to live outside. This whole community has started to get disintegrated. So the whole idea of collaborative learning, collaborative projects, which is a very important aspect of campus living, campus culture, is now sort of dying. Yeah. Manisha, would you want to take over, please? Next.
Yeah, can you all hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So basically, there'll be three parts to the entire duration of the term. So the first part will be basically research, which will be through various campus housing studies, which we would like to kind of understand, and it will be all secondary research. And we will be looking at campus housing, both international and national, and the kind of frameworks through which they were developed or how they evolved over time. And the second part would be a collaborative master plan. By that we mean we will probably have students in groups to make master plans, which will be an understanding of the kind of density, the kind of infrastructure, phasing ideas, programming, and also ideas of built and open. And the third part will be essentially student housing and faculty housing. So there will be various housing typologies which we hope to kind of create, and the relationships and interrelationships between them. Now the site is, like we mentioned earlier, it's situated in Vadala, and I don't know how many of you all are familiar with it, but Five Gardens is located on the southwest corner of the campus. And there is the King Circle flyover over here, there is the Vadala monorail, and there is ICT, Institute of Chemical Technology, located. This is an image on the lower right corner. You have the campus, which it was in 1928. So this campus was really set up in 1887. It was set up in 1887, and it was called the Victoria Jubilee Technical Institute. And apparently what we've understood also from their website is it had a pivotal role in setting up IITs and RECs of India. So this is surrounded, actually, yeah, I forgot to mention, this is surrounded by also a lot of residential communities on all sides. And yeah, the campus within, it's around 16 acres. And what you see are these large open grounds in the residential area. And you have the institute and these kind of leafy, lot of trees on campus. And you have some existing hostels So yeah, this is really the plan of the campus, where you see the institutional part has been largely kind of situated on the northern half of the site, whereas the southern half of the site has these isolated hostel blocks, which have been kind of fragmented and built as and when the need has been kind of required by the institute. So yeah, so this is basically the project. Yeah. Thank you. Shantanu, would you like to add or summarize? You're on mute. You're on mute.
Okay. All right. Can you hear me now? Yeah.
Yeah.
So one of the aspects about student housing is and has been is, and you could see on the plan also, there was always this emphasis on the recreational and the playgrounds to be on the right hand side of this plan, to be a part of the student housing. So that's very important. Historically, that has been a part of the residential campus, but at the same time, there has been transformation of how recreation is being looked at. So now recreation is also becoming a part of the buildings. There are aspects of how we recreate has changed. So this is a very important aspect. How we play has changed. So many of the design programs that the living has become a part, recreation has become a part of living, sports have become part of living, and many other aspects. When we look at how learning is done, learning is now a collaborative sort of entity where you have collective spaces for project learning. Now, you could always have these in the institute, but these notions are changing, and we've realized that providing spaces for collaborative learning, where community spaces, which are also indoor and outdoor, there has been a strong interest in this nature of radical, or wouldn't say radical, but transformations that are happening in housing in the student communities. And at the same time, faculty also are coming closer. There was this notion, if you look at this plan, the director lives on the left-hand side. I don't know how to draw on this. I'm used to Zoom. Left hand, if you see my cursor on the left-hand side, this bungalow here is the director's bungalow. So there was this notion before that the faculty would always be disconnected from the students. But over the years, we've seen campuses where there has been a coming together, where faculty housing is closer to the student housing. Of course, not living together maybe completely, but what is that proximity that you would want, so that there's collaborative engagement between faculty, students, and rectors. So all these aspects have been tested in a campus like this, and this campus has seen these transformations already. The campus is accepting these sort of concepts which are new, and they've realized that they are required for the evolution of its campus, because for 100 years, not much has changed there, and it is transforming. So we hope that it's a challenging exercise. We are looking at a high FSI of 2.5. Manisha, is that right? FSI?
Yeah. We were kind of thinking we'll break it up also into a couple of FSI frameworks, but I think 2.5 is what we've kind of finalized for the block.
Perspective of going ahead another 30, 40 years, because it's the idea is not to develop just for a particular a year or two, but for a long-term perspective. Yeah, that's any questions, we'd be happy to answer them.
Maybe I think we should take all the questions in the end. What do you guys?
I think we can take the questions now, or maybe after this presentations or something. Yeah. Because otherwise it will get very long, I don't know how long it will get. It might get long. No, they might forget.
Questions, then good. If they are prepared with their questions, good.
Yeah, if they are, then yeah, we can take them.
Guys, are there any questions?
They'll not be able to see you, but they'll be definitely able to hear you and see your presentation.
You can put them on the chat also.
I can type their questions, and so y'all can look at it on the chat, and y'all can answer them eventually. So if students have any questions related to the module, they can also put it on the chat.
Or they can. Okay.
Have you opened up the chat box for everyone?
It's open.
It's open. You can click on the icon, see the.
It's open. It's open. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think there are any questions. You can just go ahead. I don't think they'll be able to formulate questions at this.
Maybe we give them time. They can ask like that.
Okay, then we do all questions at the end, like Manisha said.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Okay.
So, okay, guys. So I'll share, and Samarth, Sonal, George, we can talk simultaneously if need be. Yeah. And that'll create a kind of a presentation for the students as well. So I'm sharing my screen. Manisha, you stopped sharing, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes,
Cool.
I have.
Just
Yes,
give me 10 seconds. Yeah. Okay. Are you able to see?
Yes.
Yeah.
George, just unmute until you're talking because this seems to be some background noise.
Yeah, just it's loading, so it takes a few seconds, and then once it's up, we can.
Kalpit, have you managed to figure out what Mayur?
Okay, shall we start, Sonal?
Yeah.
Okay, so I hope everybody has read the outline that we had sent. What we have done for you guys is we have prepared a small kind of a presentation that actually just shows you the ways in which our neighborhoods are around us, and what we are trying to do is we're trying to give you guys a sense that it is the collection of these kind of ideas of neighborhoods that actually makes the city come alive. Okay, it makes the city actually, and this is just an attempt at sort of starting to discuss what all is there in our neighborhoods. As you guys have already read that each of you will be in your own neighborhoods performing this studio. Okay, so it's and we are also going to be in our own neighborhoods, 4 of us in 4 different neighborhoods. There might be students in Bombay, there might be students elsewhere. For all of us, our own neighborhood becomes the sort of object of inquiry for this studio. Okay, so the idea is that we stay within our neighborhoods. Okay, where there is a possibility to actually move, we actually move in our neighborhoods. Where there is possibility that there are restrictions on movement of neighborhoods, there are restrictions on movement of neighborhood. We don't try to break those restrictions at all. Okay, so that's the broad idea. I'm just going to. Okay, so there is a way in which we look outside our windows. Yeah, and this is a view right where I'm sitting right now, and there is something happening outside my window. There is a lot of construction activity. There is a lot of green. There are sometimes people on the terraces. My window is filled with these kind of sort of activities happening all the time, and I want to keep a lookout. George?
Yeah, and the window becomes this kind of, right now in this last 4 months, the window becomes the only, the medium through which you can connect to the outside and the inside. And what the window does is also it frames what is outside, and also establishes a relationship between the viewer and the neighborhood that lies outside the window. So that is something that we need to constantly engage and be conscious about, that engagement that we are trying to connect and look out of our windows. Next.
Yeah, and sometimes we are very serious about that lookout. Huh? We are acutely observing what is happening around our streets. Jane Jacobs calls it eyes on streets. Here they are called binoculars on streets. Okay, so that observation is now getting very serious. Yeah. And then sometimes you find strange things happening on the street. You suddenly find two cars parking one next to the other, and there's some exchange of objects between the two cars. Okay, or in my street, this is a kind of a lonely part of the neighborhood where we see a lot of interesting kind of illicit activities happening also. Okay, girls and boys smoking in the car, etc., etc., etc. And then the neighborhood sometimes creates beautiful vistas for us. Okay, and Samarth, I don't know where this is.
Yeah, this is actually close to my house. Near
Wow.
Irranala.
Very nice. So the world comes into the world comes into our space. So this is near Bandra. We often sort of take a ride to this part. There's a new kind of public space which is created there, and we look back at our neighborhood. So if you see this building right here. Between this and this building here is where my house is located. And then occasionally the vistas give us sunsets. They give us spaces for public interaction. They give us ways in which we actually keep ourselves healthy. These are all ways in which the city is transforming. Go ahead.
This is like looking towards the airport. This is somewhere in Kurla. Okay, and then you see and also then the shift between time. I mean, day and night. Okay, and then the different kinds of areas that pop up with activity. I mean, they are with activities that are all within. So there are several neighborhoods now in this frame. Okay, and all of them have something or other going around. There's a ground there. There's a match happening there in the ground. There's a flight that's taking off and landing, and things. A lot of these things are also happening. So the neighborhood or the vista allows you to see all the neighborhoods coming together, creating an ecosystem of neighborhood. Right?
Yeah.
Like this is looking at the
Chowpatty.
From hanging Chowpatty, look from the hanging gardens. They're looking towards the thing, and then suddenly you have neighborhoods where you have a green lung, one of the oldest gardens in the city, and then you have the sea, and then you have work centers, living spaces, and all of it in one kind of a neighborhood. So then, and this is the next one is also another image. This is somewhere in.
This is actually above. Right? It's from the terrace of my building. So this is where the crane is right now. Is Cooper Hospital, where they're building a new medical college and hostel facility. But I think, Shirish, when you start basically just scrolling through the images, I think the idea is that we all are used to seeing these images or such kinds of images all the time. But I think the intent for us is to really kind of de-layer what makes these images, and in doing that, maybe start understanding slightly better into what goes into creating these spaces that we interact with all the time. Why does the space make us interact with that space? What makes that space exciting, or what makes that space dangerous? Or those kinds of qualities are what contribute to the character of those spaces and what interact with. So I think that's why we wanted to put together just a quick visual glossary for all of you to realize that these are not very, I mean, these are all typical images, but there's a lot of reading that can go into each of them. And that becomes a strategy to actually enter understanding your neighborhood.
Mm-hmm. We are all going to be coming from different places and different cities, and we are going to discover very different kinds of architectures in those cities. This is Bombay for
This is
us.
yeah, and these kind of different kinds of, like, also adding to what Samarth is also saying is that many times we take things for granted about our neighborhood, and this is something that the four of us had a conversation. That behind in my neighborhood, I found an old temple, or in my neighborhood, I found an very old factory. Okay, so and there are these several transformations that are happening. Now, what you see on the screen are several transformations, and also on the left of the left images are transformed. So these, and we are agents of these transformations. So the neighborhood is constantly getting transformed, or new plans of transformations are already in discussion. So it is very interesting to become consciously aware of these things. Okay, and together look at how these transformations enable, or for us to see how neighborhoods, the form of the neighborhood is something that is developed as an outcome of these transformations. Next is, this is again
This is the monorail. This is the monorail in Parel, and the structure transformations that the neighborhood is going through, adding new layers of infrastructure, adding new layers of housing, simultaneously existing with a Beti chawl over here and another chawl over here. So there are collections of architectural kind of examples that our neighborhood, or for example, I think this is in George. This is Khetwadi, right? Oh, this is Mathar Pakad.
Yeah, Mathar Pakad. So where I mean, the streets are changed, and now you have vehicles coming into the street. The next photograph image is also that. Suddenly the streets that we so imagine differently, and then you have the various kinds of like boundaries that you create within the neighborhood.
Yeah, I mean, again, thinking about the way in which architecture and space is interacting. This is from my terrace, and we've been because of this situation, we have been using the terrace quite actively, and suddenly the space of the terrace has become an important part of our lives, which it was never. And you find it's not just for us, but many other people around today are interacting with their own terraces.
Because this perspective of where you stand and you okay, becomes an important aspect. Suddenly the terrace becomes a point of view. I mean, the terrace becomes a space where you stand, and your vantage point of the neighborhood changes. Whereas this photograph is differently taken, where you look at the play space, and at the background you have a new kind of a development that is being built. This is somewhere. So I mean, these kind of vantage points are also important. So these photographs are just clues to that we are not specifically looking at one particular kind of. The story is important, what you want to bring in. The next is the social spaces. This is between buildings you have social spaces. Next. This is Manganga. This is a social space, but this is a very large one. This is the Mathar Pakadi. Okay. Social spaces mitigating different levels. Okay. This is another space between buildings.
LIC.
A quadrangle area in LIC. These walks are important also. Walks on the beach, walks on the road, walks on a rainy day, walks during the night.
This is at Worli Seaface, the coastal road work which is going on.
These are secret passages in LIC colony. Sonal, you remember this? Yeah.
Okay, so I think Shirish, what we can do is maybe just explain very briefly, and then maybe we can conclude is how the students would be going about it. What the idea is, the basic idea is that we are you all are going to be in your individual areas. We're not going to be meeting in school at all at college. So the idea is that through walks, through photographs, videos, etc., the initial part of the studio will be more of you explaining to us what your neighborhood is all about, and how you start delayering and understanding what your neighborhood is. And based on that, what we're going to try and do is identify and understand the fact that there are various actors that function in harmony to make a neighborhood. There's a lot of self-sufficiency, but there's also a lot of interdependency between different actors within the neighborhood. We will be identifying what these actors are, what kind of programs, what kind of spaces make the idea of the neighborhood. And then the idea of the urban intervention. Shirish, and please, anyone, just kind of jump in whenever. But the idea of the urban intervention is to try and identify a kind of potential for an urban intervention. It may be a gap that you would wish to fill. There might be something missing in your neighborhood. There might be a new catalyst that you would want to introduce to change something in the neighborhood that you have so closely interacted with over the last 3 or 4 months in a way that you had never done before. So I think that's where we try and start bringing down a lot of this reading into a more practical and pragmatic, I would say tactical, tactile intervention, which could be a building, it could be a series of interventions, it could be, at different scales. So we're looking at SMLXL as a kind of typology and way to enter a design project, keeping in mind these larger urban design ideas. And
yes, the idea is also sorry, go ahead, Sonal.
So basically the studio is an investigation into what makes a neighborhood, what makes the structure of a neighborhood. As the brief mentions, the neighborhood is a made space. It is made by people, especially in our city. It is made through acts, through particular kind of structures of use of especially in Bombay. In other cities it may be different, but there are different ideas of neighborhoods that emerge in different parts of the city historically, also different regions in India as well. So it's going to investigate this structure of the neighborhood, and that is the sort of urban understanding that the studio tries to bring. And in the second is it tries to make kind of architectural interventions around what can be understood as the infrastructure for neighborhoods. Okay, what supports the kind of structure of neighborhoods. So yeah, that's around that's about it. Has an exploratory thing that everyone will be mapping, like Samar said, this idea of the neighborhood, and will have arguments about what is that idea, what is the neighborhood in the city, and will devise architectural interventions around that understanding.
What we are also doing simultaneously as a programmatic idea is to question when it comes to the intervention, or rather question and push the limits of say self-sufficiency within the neighborhood, whether it is possible or not, what is possible, what are the and those programs will develop as we are discussing the structure of the neighborhood itself. I mean, we are going to discover new ways in which neighborhoods can be read. We are going to discover new methods of mapping neighborhoods also in the process, and we are also going to ask the question of what is the place of the neighborhood within the largest city. Yeah, so these are again some of the kind of broad intentions of the studio. We have broken the studio into 4 stages. You guys all have the note. The first stage is what we call neighborhood walks. The second stage is where we are saying we are going to assemble the idea of neighborhood. This is individual for each of you. The third stage is where we will sort of we will debate and discuss the idea of self-sufficiency vis-a-vis your own neighborhood. And the last and the fourth stage is preparing the neighborhood preparing the neighborhood for change. Okay, so which means that we are looking at proposals at, like what Samat said, the extra large, the large M, and also the small details that the neighborhood can influence. The last 2 weeks of the studio we have reserved for compilation work. So the first four stages will take around 14 weeks, and the last two weeks will be a stage of compilation for the studio. Anything else, guys?
So the scales basically kind of make the argument that there is a vanity at all the scales.
All the scales,
from the smallest scale to the largest scale. Right. And the kind of intervention can be of whatever scale. We don't have, that you have to make a very large institution or anything, but the larger idea is to do an urban design, architectural urban design project.
Yeah. Okay. Shall I stop?
Yeah, I think that's good.
Okay.
I mean, we can take up more if students have questions later.
Yeah.
Okay, so Kalpit, you want to share your screen, or I mean, Shirish, you can stop.
I'm stopping. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, we can see you, Kalpit. You are on mute. Unmute.
Yes, finally.
Hi. Finally, we can see.
Do I have to wear mask or something?
No.
Chalega.
Not yet.
So how's everyone? Good?
Yeah.
Microsoft doesn't infect us, I'm told. So you don't need to wear a mask.
See, I've just come back from Hyderabad. So now you can decide. Okay. So this is a question answer session, or do we have to start?
So you
No, I mean, you start.
We can start?
Yeah.
I mean, we can take the questions later. We'll take the questions later.
Okay.
Share.
Yeah.
Can you see?
Yeah, we can see your screen, Mayuri.
Okay.
You can see our screen?
Yeah.
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 Okay.
It's clear?
Yep.
Yeah? We'll start?
Yeah, I'll start.
Okay. Hi. So we are mainly looking into, basically it will be a housing module. We're trying to look at the government quarters within the city. It's titled Housing Anatomies. Trying to look into three kind of lenses through which the housing gets shaped around us. One of the body, bureaucracy, bodies, the people who are living, the bureaucracy, and the city. And mainly with the focus on the government quarter lands which exist in the city. So this kind of the common question of housing which exists all around us, that housing is there for all, but it's full screen, right? You guys can see it, right?
No, it's not full screen.
It's not full screen.
No,
not you can just.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
But Samarth, sorry, Kalpit, it's clear. We are able to see enough.
Yes, yeah.
No, is it full screen?
It's not full screen.
No.
It's not full screen, but I think it's readable. It's clear.
Yeah, it's very clear.
Okay. So I'll share my desktop. Do I have to say share desktop or?
You can share desktop.
No, when I was explaining, we were not able to see ourselves, or none of you guys. We were just seeing our PPT. That's it.
I think go here. Just go here. Just click on
this is what I had done already.
Kalpit, it's very clear. Yeah, the whole. I mean, it's.
Yeah.
We can see your slide. This
now.
Presentation mode mein ja. But we can read
please,
everything.
please
You can
go
go ahead.
But you are what is the interface you all are seeing?
Housing for all.
We are seeing your screen and I can see the slides on the left side.
That's okay.
Slide wheel.
Just go ahead.
Yeah, that's okay.
Just a second. Just a second. Share desktop. Okay.
Now
Is it better now?
Yeah, now it's full screen.
Now it's full screen? Okay. Okay. So, I mean, this is the housing story which is common for all of us, especially in Mumbai. There is housing for all, but there's not affordable housing which exists around us. Also, there are many vacant houses and still there are homeless. So the question is that the what is getting built in the city is somewhere not connecting with its people and its environment. So for this module, we are focusing on looking at the government quarters land which exist in all different states. The studio will study and propose new visions for housing and quarters for the bureaucracy that administers our city. If you look at our DP, it exists all over the city in various wards. This is an example from F North Ward. And in the legend, if you see this yellow striped part, which looks into categories of municipal staff quarters, police quarters, BST colonies, government colonies, etc. And these parcels of land exist in a very large chunk all over the city, and most of them kind of started post-independence, where mainly for the public sector companies, the government offices, they were built for the staff workers to provide affordable housing while they are working in the city.
I think the idea came up post-independence when the people who were working for the government, they were finding it difficult to buy a house or even rent a house. So a lot of government departments, they started kind of building their own housing, and under different models, they started distributing housing to their staff.
So usually there is a format which is attached where there are, depending on the pay scale, there are different models of houses for different user groups. Most of them are these typical templates which are kind of multiplied and spread across, but they do demonstrate some very interesting cases of open space. If you look at this image, the ratio of the walkable area versus the vehicular road, abundance of space around which is unused, unplanned, and scattered. It also kind of invested into building several amenities and soft kind of everyday infrastructures like training institutes, clinics, marriage halls, markets, etc. So which are part of these kind of housing development complex. But most of these amenities which were built into these quarters were mainly for the users, the staff, the government staff, does not have an access with the city. And hence, if you see in most of these images, actually they are kind of not completely used. Most of the time they are vacant or partially used. Whereas on the other side, there is a city which is in dearth of amenities, open spaces, etc. They also had these large playgrounds and open spaces and maidans, which were part of the planning of these quarters in the city. There are many such cases. Just to name a few, there are MCGM staff quarters, BST colonies, central government employees quarters, railways, firefighters colony, lady officers housing. There is different category looking into married women, unmarried women, working girls hostel, holiday homes for touring officers, and recently what they have come up with is ashray housing for sanitation workers by MCGM. So there are many such models through which the housing is delivered to the staff which works. These are few of the agencies which are executing and delivering these housing across. One is Directorate of Estates, the National Building Construction Corporation, Central Government Welfare Organization. For railways, there is IRWA.
So basically, depending on the department, there is a separate kind of an organization which is administering the entire delivery of housing.
Yeah. They have their own kind of pools through which the housing is allotted, depending on which kind of segment you fit into, and accordingly a size of the house and everything is decided. So the grade of the pay.
Basically, in the entire administrative hierarchy, they are divided into grades. So there's a kind of strict hierarchy. So depending on what your salary is, where your position is, you are given like the amount of space and the house type you will get is fixed. So if you are, let's say, from somewhere, let's say from grade 1, then you'll have a smaller unit. If you are from grade 7, then you'll have a larger house with a terrace or something. So.
So there are these templates. So these are the templates which the unit plans which defines what should be the housing across the country, and
sometimes across the country, sometimes across the state.
Across the state.
So for example, I think just to make the housing delivery easy and to kind of make sure that people get standard kind of houses in some way, the templates are also fixed sometimes, and the templates repeat across the state, across the country, without even thinking what kind of exists around that.
Yeah.
And because of which you get development like these, where these things, same thing.
Yeah. So this is a pamphlet from the Government Employees Welfare Association trying to sell few houses in Greater Noida, and if you can look at the features, it speaks about the 25 meters deep foundation.
CCTV camera,
SS balcony railing, so you'll get stainless steel railings, etc. But what is shocking is actually to see the kind of the build form that is kind of emerging, and no one is talking about it. That what is the open space, what is the built environment you are building, but what gets actually becomes of a concern is whether it's a stainless steel railing or are there foundations, etc. So, and this is just one of an example. So if you see, so these kind of are the models of bureaucracy which is continuously building our cities, and this is the kind of the build form which has already got built over several years, and which is good in some sense because it does have a better open space, better amenities compared to what we get today in our cities, but at the same time it creates this kind of a banal, emotionless kind of a build form just scattered around with very kind of lot of unused spaces and plans. It's just an example where the building is freshly painted and it writes that this painting is done for this building. And what is happening recently is that most of these quarters didn't kind of maintain themselves well. So
generally the government departments were maintaining them. So a lot of them are maintained well in Bombay, but a major fraction is kind of dilapidating slowly. I think in a lot of centrally administered cases, CPWD is not maintaining them well. So they're like this is a case of 1,600 families where they're living in dilapidated housing. And there's kind of constant pressure on kind of moving them into a new safe housing.
Yeah. So there exists a large stock of housing, but they are unable to use this because it has gone into a state of dilapidation. And
also because the administrative structure kind of expanding, there's also need to create, other than the housing, these existing ones, there's also pressure to create more housing for the staff.
Yeah. So on one hand, we have houses, but they're not able to use it. Second hand, there is a shortage of affordable homes. So there are continuously these cases going on with the government employees and High Court asking them to evict, and the people who have stayed for several years, more than 30-40 years of their duty, are asked to vacate because the new staff needs to be accommodated into those homes. So, and these are the homes, and so what happens is that these kind of just becomes containers for living, and as you get transferred or as you are kind of retired, you have to vacate those houses. And and for many of them, these houses, they have stayed for more than 30 years, 40 years, and they have histories attached to it. They have memories. They kind of transform drastically overnight during festivals and other kind of activities of the city. So on one side, there is this kind of a very dry site of these quarters, and on the other hand, it becomes extremely dynamic and transforming it, which could have, must have been imagined. And at the same time, what also happens is that the city is growing and they belong to some very different times. So you'll see these skywalks, monorails, subways, etc., kind of just piercing through it, and they kind of both have this kind of denial and conflict which exist along several of these quarters. Also, what role these government plays in shaping the city, because most of the time when these projects are happening, unfortunately, they are seen the role the government takes up is almost like a developer, where they plan. So these are the two big cases. One is Antopil government colony, which is the Asia's largest government quarters, going for redevelopment. And the second one, the Bandra quarters of 10,000 quarters, which are going under redevelopment. And most of these cases, it's important to understand that it's not just the homes which are getting built, but also parallelly the city is getting built. And if government is unable to identify the role of these lands just limited to housing, then we are going to get a bizarre kind of a city, what we kind of experience, which is short of amenities, short of any kind of decent build form.
Also, a lot of housing is also nice. It's not that all of it is bad. So in that way, you have to look at what other strategy you use to what do you do? You know, sometimes maybe you keep the housing, but develop, let's say, the network of infrastructure or network of amenities in them. So it's not only housing, but it's that you don't look at housing, infrastructure, and amenities as three separate things. But for example, in this image, there's infrastructure, housing, city, everything are colliding with each other. So it's like, how do you kind of look at it as a network?
Yeah. So one of the major agenda of the studio would be to look at housing, which is something going to be part of shaping of the urban form, where this growing city and the imaginations for the future city are embedded into the typologies of these quarters. That's one. And this is a classic case where when the skywalks are going ahead, they build a skywalk, it's not thought of, then they shut off with these panels on the side. So you're suffering in the skywalk as well as the people who are residing are suffering around them. And this kind of, it creates that in between, and then the city still thrives through it. Kind of there is within that residual, within that in between emerges the festivals, the markets, etc. Within that.
The idea is if you're able to kind of design typology, which is able to right now the open space is kind of absorbing all the kind of life in some way. But even if you're able to come up with a typology which is able to which is mass produced, which is typical, which is, let's say, standard, but in some ways able to kind of make peace with the everyday life of people, and it's kind of able to absorb everyday life of people.
Yeah. Also looking at the opportunities to shape the future city, because if you look at our municipality, our government, their role is to build a better society, and the way they build our society is going to create its better citizens. And in that process, if the scope of this government land just becomes about building the housing for their staff, then who builds the city? Because and that's kind of the place. So again, coming back to some of these examples, so every ward there exists these plots, and at the same time, there's another crisis with the cities facing, that we are going to fall short of 2,076 hectares of amenity land in 20 years. And if this is the way the city grows, of course, we're going to fall short of this amenity land. Also, recently looking at maximum city, maximum cases, we are lacking basic facilities. So it's important to understand that the housing cannot exist in isolation. It exists as a part of a larger ecology. And within that ecology is also the shaping of the urban form and the shaping of the city. So how can we start kind of rethinking these large parcels of land which are spread across the city, start becoming generators to rethink the futures and rethink housing typology? So that's kind of the primary agenda for this studio. Now we'll just quickly run through the process which we are planning to follow. One is looking at the housing typologies of Mumbai, where we'll brief you all with historically what has shaped housing and what are the kind of transformations it has taken back. We'll be looking at films on service quarters, government quarters, looking at readings on housing. So it's important to begin with housing. It's not just about a site and a project and you build a good house, but it's more important to conceptually understand housing as an ontological question, where what really housing means in a city, what it means in urban areas, etc. So through these readings, we will be first kind of formulating the premise of what do you mean by housing and what is a home. Then we'll be looking at 25 government quarters in various wards of Mumbai. And based on that, and the second step would be looking into DCR 33A and B. Basically, DCR 33A, B looks into development of these government lands and quarters.
Development and redevelopment.
And redevelopment of them. So the project not necessarily would be looking only as a redevelopment as an option, but there could be multiple ways with which the growth of these lands could take place. Also to understand DCR not just as a set of regulations, but something as a spatial form. That what are these different kind of aspects of regulation which can shape housing? Like why do we get housing in a particular way? So we will do series of exercises to kind of spatialize these regulations into build form. And the last one would be an exercise of looking at housing glossary. So these would be kind of smaller exercises of one week or, and then to kind of build a glossary around which we can conceptualize housing.
This is also to do with like making, like that's what we're calling it anatomy, where you're able to kind of break the housing down, the body of the housing down into parts and kind of begin to reimagine each part in a way, the roof or the room or the window or plinth or entrance or all of these things.
And broadly, the studio would be broken into 5 stages. The first, looking into existing typologies of quarters. Second, delineating a context to respond. Third, housing futures, speculating scenarios for housing and its urban futures. Fourth, architectural design on these sites. And the fifth would be looking at a catalog and a studio log, which will document this process. Parallelly, while you all are developing, the students are developing these things, I think around 7 talks we will run through. The first one looking into historical overview of housing, the post-independence, that what have been kind of initiative by the states and different policies through which housing has been imagined and transformed over years. Second, site context narrative. In this, we'll be focusing on drawing the built environment, that what could be the methods through which we can draw our built environment. Third looks into diagramming architecture, methods and processes for architectural evolution. So this will come at a stage when you are designing at a conceptual stage, which will look into idea of diagramming. Then case studies, housing experiments across various places. Fifth one will come at a stage at the massing, where we look into density, typology, and the urban form, like how these 3 factors kind of are connected to each other and looking at examples through that. Sixth would be the stage when the building is in place, and we'll get into building language and tectonics. And the last one, the drawing narrative, the representational tool. So how do we narrate this story of housing? So I think this to kind of sum up, this is what is kind of the broad focus. We're not getting into kind of details, the methodology we are planning for anatomy and how we'll go about it. I think with the group we can discuss that. And just to kind of brief, if others, just to kind of students, that this studio is actually a part of the series on explorations on housing, which we have been doing, I think, since last 2 years. The first one was in Varanasi, then last year, Hyderabad. This one was with a focus more on ecology. So it was called Housing Ecology, Home, Habitat, and City. Mainly looking at 3 scale and the question that the houses does not exist in isolation, but it's part of a network of an ecology. The process there, what was followed was study of 9 ecologies of Hyderabad, which looked into urban studies, then identifying 50 typologies of dwelling within each, and building up 9 scenarios that what should be the form of living. So these are just some glimpses of, actually it's a GIF looking at various housing models, from dharamshalas to tourist centers to hotels to rented apartments, etc. It's a GIF, I think. So anyways, yeah. So there was a collection of 50 houses which was based, and based on that, it was kind of, we started from a home, then looked at a precinct, and then the city. And then there were 9 kind of narratives on housing which were done. So the studio was run as a pair of students, 2 students looking into 1 ecology and identifying a housing phenomena which is kind of shaping the nature of housing in each of these ecologies. And then they built their design interventions. The first one looked into ideas of housing in public realm, of strategies of urban regeneration. This was looking at a heart of an old city and developing a building block which is completely open and in an historic areas. The second one looked at the idea of everyday heritage, the prototypes of neighborhood living. It's built in these sets of smaller kind of projects which the locals and common people could build by themselves and develop, and eventually the precinct grows around it. Third one looked into idea of housing as amenity, where instead of designing housing, you design amenity, and the housing kind of grows as a parasite around it. So this is the third scenario. So basically, the reason for showing this is the model, the method we would be following would be similar. It would be more than a site. It would be developing scenarios to different forms of living, and how these forms of living and different phenomena can shape the nature in which our typologies can be designed for housing. There was redefining government quarters. This project looked into redensifying hybrid habitats. The next one looked into high-rise, looking mainly into the idea of housing for all, affordable mass housing, and how do we start building high-rises which are incremental in nature. A lot of these projects were not just housing, but they are much more than housing, which became part of creating the urban form and the city. Activating the urban node. This was a node project. Urban micro communities, trying to look at new forms of living like Airbnbs, hostels, etc., where different kind of user groups inhabit that for a very temporary period of time and moves out in business districts. This was looking at a scenario of transit-oriented development and rethinking metro stations and housing. I think this is the last one, second last, morphology of urban village, looked into a part of a city which was on a hillock as an urban village and what softer transformations it can take place for socially organized dwellings. Breaking through the boundary, this one looked into a case of LIGs, MIGs, HIGs into an area in Hyderabad, housing for all. Yeah. So yeah, I think so basically it kind of summed up into a small exhibition which was there at KRVI for 1 week, and so the part of making of the exhibition, designing of the book was kind of happening from day one. It was part of the project. It's because it's important also how do you narrate this, because if it was just about designing a housing on a plot and finishing the panel, then it really does not play a larger role in kind of building up an argument about what role housing can play in the city. So yeah, it kind of summed up into this studio log where the processes, the methods, the lectures, everything was, and the design conjectures were part of it. Yeah. So this is what is this. I think we'll wrap up on this. If there are any questions, thank you.
Okay. So all the presentations are done. Should the students have any questions for any of the faculty? Are the students still there or are they sleeping?
Sleeping.
Oh, not so long.
I think they're there.
I think faculty are awake. Shweta, the process is such that faculty has to be awake.
Presentations are fine. Later, all students have to keep their cameras on.
So am I still sharing this?
No, it's gone. It's gone.
Okay.
It's gone? No, but I saw a raised hand.
सबको सब clear है.
You saw raised hand?
सबको सब clear है.
The hand which disappeared very.
We have been very good.
Okay, one more raised hand.
No, that was just me trying it.
Doing what?
Who raised hand?
Did.
Nobody has questions, then we'll go.
Okay, I think it's fine. No questions.
Are there any questions?
Questions? Okay, maybe you can. They can type their questions, and we type questions later as well. We may rewatch due to network issues. So, is it fine with you guys if they type their questions?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Shweta, you're on mute.
That's fine for us. Yeah.
When do they have to give their name? Shweta, your mic is on mute.
Somebody mutes me all the time.
Yeah,
Even
I got muted. I'm not even talking.
It might be Lakshman.
Okay, so should we give them time till tomorrow morning or afternoon for asking questions, and then maybe you all can respond by tomorrow evening, something like that, or maybe a day or something?
Yeah, one day is good, I think.
So one day, and maybe by let's say they can give us their preferences by Friday or something. So I'll set a deadline for that. So I think let's give them one day for asking questions on the group, and y'all can type the answers. Is that fine?
Okay.
Yeah, works well.
Yeah.
Okay. So the one not seen it may watch it and may have questions. So.
Okay.
Okay, so let's should we end the call then?
But if anybody does have questions right now, they can ask them. There are some questions coming up here.
How large a neighborhood? Anushka is asking a question. There is no scale to the idea of the neighborhood without your idea of what the neighborhood structure is.
You're muted again. Yeah, it's just
what is this?
Again, you're on mute.
Yeah, but that's happening. Everyone's getting muted for some reason.
I think we'll have to make them. I think.
Shiru's answered, I think. Yeah. Mostly it will be around a walkable distance.
Yeah.
But you'll be working at different intensities at different scales.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's it.
More questions, okay. Can someone please elaborate more on the structure of neighborhood project and how semester will work? Okay. Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, so
Shiru, if you can read the stages out, like what they'll be doing, that will be easier.
I'll read it out. I'll read it out. That's better. Okay, I thought they have already read it. That's why I didn't want to repeat it, but I'll read out. Okay. Right. So okay. So the studio is an exploration of the dynamics between the neighborhood as a unit of the city and the space of every day as a space of resistance and possibilities for reshaping the city to new logics. Okay, so we are exploring our own immediate neighborhoods where the studio intends to learn the mechanics of our neighborhoods and its communities and what place it has on in our urban as well as domestic life. So that's broadly what we intend to do. While we learn how our neighborhoods are structured and how they function, the studio also will question ideas of self-sufficiency within the boundaries of the neighborhood. Okay, the stages. First stage is neighborhood walks. In this stage, each student takes numerous walks in their neighborhoods, much like a derive. Derive is a way in which you actually walk through the neighborhood. We'll be explaining you. There'll be a series of presentations that allow you to actually start the process of the of studio documentation. Yeah, recording through photographs, videos, interviews, and sketches of their impressions of the neighborhoods. That's stage one. Okay. Is it fine if the neighborhood is located outside city limits? It has to be if you are there. Okay, meaning a neighborhood right now is where you are. That is fundamental. We are not going to select a neighbor. So I'm staying in Mahim. I cannot take a neighborhood which is say in Dahisar. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, Shirish.
Yeah, Shirish, you're muted. No, I'm not muted. People are saying I'm muted. Yes, Anav, the neighborhood is where you are. Correct. Yes. So that's the whole idea, that you might be wherever you are right now, that is your neighborhood. That's the neighborhood that we are going to see. Is that clear to everyone? Okay, so that's the stage one. Stage one is where we are doing neighborhood walks. Stage two is where we are assembling the neighborhood, where the students will be encouraged to assemble their neighborhood, both morphologically as a collection of ideas, thoughts, perceptions. The student will be using all available data, which is through secondary sources, maps, Google Earth images, etc. And they will generate an image of their neighborhood in terms of the four scales. So SML, Excel. So this is a morphological study, the second stage. Third stage is where we are actually finding the ideas of self-sufficiency, and we'll articulate the appropriate frameworks for self-sufficiency for that neighborhood. Okay, so for example, if your neighborhood is located on the outskirts of the city, the idea of self-sufficiency is very different there as against if you're located within the heart of the city. So we are very aware that different neighborhoods will bring in different complexities. Yeah. And the fourth stage is very clear. We are looking at four scales of transformations in the neighborhoods. Does that answer? It is an individual project. Somebody has asked if it is an individual. Yeah, it is an individual project.
Yeah. And the idea of the last stage also, sorry, the idea of the last stage is also that even through the four different scales, like Sonal earlier said, there is an urbanity in each of those scales.
Yeah.
So we will, I mean, rest assured, we will definitely get into design in a very good and detailed way. But certainly that design would also be looked at those four scales. Yeah.
Yeah. Any other questions?
One more question for the other two modules, that apart from the neighborhood module, the other two modules are imagined as non-physical long distance research. Is that so? Shantanu, Manisha, and Kalpit?
We are open with both the formats actually. Once the group is allotted, we'll do one round of discussion with students and then decide accordingly.
We were also thinking of a possibility where they can look at the quarters located in their ward, so which is kind of which they can kind of access or whatever. At least just go to see it at least once.
Yeah.
But yeah, depends.
Depends. Both we have worked out both the ways. So depending on the students where they are located, we'll take further call.
I think from our perspective, a lot of the material, including survey drawings, all of it is what we can provide because it's already with us. Considering that you could be locked down wherever you live. Now, there will be students who get the opportunity to move around if they live in the city close by. That's an advantage, but they would also share their learnings with the rest of the group. So the idea is that it will be shared. It's not that you have the advantage of the site. So it's a collective in that sense. Your research will be a collective effort. The rest of it is all virtual as much as possible. We will even try to connect virtually with students of the hostel community, the student community there. We'll give access to you, and so that you can interact with them. So some stakeholders we will manage to connect you with. So that is going to be virtual. There's no need to meet these people physically. If possible, yes, meeting also if things open up. So we are looking at all scenarios. It's not that we're completely saying that it will always be virtual. If things change, then we should also be able to interact with stakeholders there.
Okay, so we'll take questions till tomorrow morning, and then by afternoon, or maybe by tomorrow evening, you all can answer the remaining questions if there are any. Is that all right? We'll give one more day for this.
Yeah.
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 Fine.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, guys.
Okay.
Bye.
Okay then.
Bye.
Okay. Bye bye. Take care.
Bye.
Okay, thanks everyone. Okay, bye.
Bye. Bye.
Shantanu, you're saying something.
Hey, somebody has a question.
Okay. Do you guys know why we're using Microsoft Team and not Zoom? I mean, just a question.
Because Yeah, because actually, Shantanu, the college actually has rights to Microsoft Teams, since we are already their clients
Okay.
for other software. So they have given us a huge amount of space, and they have given us all proprietary softwares to sort of use this. And also, what it means is that all our students are enrolled on Microsoft Teams. Uh, and it has certain abilities to actually take attendances and things like that.
Okay.
Okay, so you can immediately generate an attendance record, and so basically it's just that. I mean,
It works for school.
yeah, and also then we can get 200 students to do this with us also simultaneously.
All right.
So otherwise, yeah.
You guys are able to draw seamlessly on this interface. You guys have been able to draw over drawings and stuff like that when we discuss drawings and stuff. Is that something?
There are if now that you guys have downloaded Teams,
Yeah.
okay, so which means that you also have all their proprietary softwares, which is part of Office 365. Okay, on there there are certain softwares which allow you to scribble, and so there's a board on which you can write things like that. The difficulty is, I mean, if I had a touchpad and a pen, it becomes easier. Otherwise, with a mouse, but still, I mean, you can experiment with it. Sorry, some other questions. Could you please expand little on what the intervention will
Sonal
be
has
for
replied.
neighbor? Yeah, Sonal has replied. Okay. Now that we are clear on this, can you please share the mail IDs on which we are supposed to give our
That is for Shweta.
preferences? That's for Shweta. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, thanks, Samar. Yeah.
So I think good. So
Yeah.
we can keep asking. Probably we can we come back anytime and also look at what they have asked and then answer it also, right?
Yeah, we can do that also. We can always come back here and reply.
Yeah, you
back.
can answer the question.
Yeah.
Okay.
That we can do.
Shall we close the conversation now?
All
Bye.
right.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye,
Bye.
guys.
Bye. Bye.
Great.
Take care,
Thanks
guys.
a lot, everyone. Thanks.
Bye.
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 Bye. Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.